guys, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to do something a little bit different. Instead of reviewing a full game, I'm going to review some game related material. And today I'm excited to introduce you the Bloodborne comic book. Now this one is released by Titancomics and it's called The Death of Sleep. Now they've been doing much smaller volumes that they've been releasing gradually for the last few months, so you've probably seen or even read these before, but I wanted to wait until they had a good size volume, and this is the first one and they are going to continue it for a second one, so it's going to be good to see what they end up doing with it. So this will be a review of the material in The Death of Sleep, this first volume. Note that there will be spoilers for both the game and the comic in this review, so keep that in mind. What I'd love to start with is the quality of the artwork. I feel that the artist was successfully able to capture the overall feel of the game with this cover in and of itself, which is not easy to do because the game is so atmospheric and it's so iconic, which is something that I noticed in the game itself. The overall color scheme is muted, but the reds tend to be very deep and very vibrant. I'll probably show some higher resolution screens of this if I can get them, but one great and successful part of the art in this book as well is that you have completely full colored illustrations. If you've played the game, you'll find some familiar sights in this, and I feel that the areas here were rendered extremely well, as well as the characters. I feel that much of the cosmic imagery in the game as well was captured very nicely in this book. However, the main critique that I have lies in the plot, storytelling, and prose. If you've played the game, one of the first things that you encounter is a note in Yosefka's clinic that says, "Seek pale blood to transcend the hunt." And essentially you play the entire game trying to figure out what that means. Now for me, that was something that drove me forward throughout the whole game. If I didn't have that mystery aspect, I would have probably quit playing out of frustration, even though this ended up being one of the best games I've ever played. And the reason why is because the mystery kept driving me forward. I feel that that was lacking severely in the book. You have that mystery pushing you forward. You're wondering the entire time, what is pale blood? You learn about 75% through the game, when the mystery's been driving you forward the entire time, that pale blood refers to the moon and the way the sky looks when the red moon is hanging low. And now that's a significant plot point as well as a significant aesthetic in the game. However, in the comic, they completely dismiss that. I'll start with the fact that the hunter encounters a really young boy in the beginning, and they claim that he is the source of pale blood by cutting him, and then his blood is literally pale. Now the story isn't finished, and I'm honestly hoping that that's just a plot device where they'll do a twist later to say that isn't exactly pale blood, but honestly I'm not sure. And that worries me because one, the director of the game, Hidetaka Miyazaki, explained that the pale blood does in fact refer to the moon. So saying it's something completely different in the comic book totally misses the point. I'm hoping that that is going to lead to a plot twist where the hunter realizes that that's not what it's referring to. In game, when someone or something bleeds pale, that means that they're a kin of the cosmos. So perhaps they're alluding to something like that, or they're leading to a significant plot twist. I genuinely hope they are, but me not being sure and thinking that they might lead it into there is worrisome. In fact, there were parts of the game where I believe it was the hunter Jura, who was a great familiar face to see. He said, "Oh, some people think that pale blood refers to the moon," when in fact that's the actual case. I feel that they're spoon-feeding the plot to you a little bit too quick, and that's missing the opportunity to go full mystery in this and create a narrative that makes you want to turn those pages. In addition to that, a lot of the hunters and general Yharnamites in the story seem to think that they know what pale blood is, whereas in the game, nobody knew. They just drove you forward and gave you hints to say, hey, I have no idea what this is, but maybe people in Cathedral Ward will know. So it leads you there. One thing they did do correctly was describing the hunter's amnesia as well as blurring the line between real life and dreams. They did that extremely effectively. In the game, that's such an abstract concept that you as the player are left to wonder the whole time, what is real and what's a dream? Is this the real life, essentially? Another perk of the story is, I believe when you get to Yosefka's clinic, she describes you as androgynous. She doesn't know if you're a man or a woman, which is excellent because in-game you can create either a male or a female character. So keeping that generic allows you, no matter who you are, no matter what gender you are, to be able to put yourself into the role of the hunter. One weird part of the narrative is that you seem to have a strange encounter with Yosefka, which the strange part of my brain really wishes that they delved a little bit further into. In fact, me describing it to you doesn't quite do it justice, so I'm going to read it to you directly from the book. And this is the page. That's the creepy young boy with the pale blood. And then of course, Yosefka, the hunter, and Gehrman. So I will be reading this page right here. Yosefka, I remember the smell of your skin. Soft, subtle markings, then overwhelm, honey and bitter medicines. In another world, we could have seen each other again. In another world. So yeah, it's very oddly scandalous. You don't get anything like that in the game. At the same time, Yosefka is a very interesting character, and I personally get some sort of vibes from her.
I'll even offer a reward for your cooperation. Tempted?
But this is something they could have explored a little bit more. I think it just would have been a fun way to actually put a twist on the story and not just make it full on, this is the game, this is the narrative, this is what I'm going to do. Another aspect that I feel mixed feelings about is the child itself. The whole story revolves around this strange child with the pale blood, and I don't know what to think about that. I think it takes the emphasis off of the fact that the hunter is you and you're trying to figure out what the heck is going on in Yharnam. Instead, you're pulling all of the focus on this random child who really seems very strange. I'm sure they're going to reveal more because they drop quite a few hints within the book. However, I just think that taking the emphasis off of the fact that this is you, this is your adventure, was a missed opportunity and not the best way to explore that narrative. In fact, there are children in the story that you could have made this about. For example, Gascoigne's children. He has 2 daughters that, to be honest, you wish that you could save. You wish that you could have brought them on the adventure with you so that they could have stayed safe. That would have been a very intriguing way to tell this story. And I feel that inserting this random bald child that looks like Bobby Hill wasn't the best way to tell that story. Along with them successfully describing and illustrating the atmosphere, one thing that I loved about it is that they described the sensations of Yharnam. When you're playing the game, it's one of those few games where you try to imagine all 5 of your senses working: sights, feelings, smells, tastes. One thing I love is that they do describe the overall stench of Yharnam, which is something I always think about while I'm playing, despite that I don't like the child being there, is that they describe insight through the child. It's clear that the child can see far more than you can. Another narrative critique is that I feel that the hunter can go through the different areas without much of a fuss. When you're in game, every boss battle, every time that you're able to push through, you feel an intense sense of accomplishment. And the reason why is because the areas, of course, are so difficult. Difficult areas and boss battles are something that you cannot insert into a book per se, so that's not necessarily something that they can change, but the fact that they can go easily from, say, Yharnam to Old Yharnam to even the fishing hamlet, which is really the ultimate area of the game, it seemed a little bit too easy because there wasn't much opposition that the hunter met along the way. It felt far lonelier than the game was. The last thing that I wanted to mention was the overall prose. The sense of prose in the book is, I would say, good. It's standard for comics, but it doesn't match the beautiful Lovecraftian-inspired prose that appears in the game. I might be biased because I grew up loving older novels, like Victorian novels and Russian existentialist novels, which are very, very wordy and almost poetic in the way that they describe the events of the story. I feel that Bloodborne is one of the only games that actually get that so right. It pulls me right into the story, grips me, and doesn't let me go. However, in the comic, you get a sense that they're trying to achieve that, but they just miss the mark. I think for a standard reader, it's absolutely fine, especially if, say, English is your second language and it's not in your particular language. You'll have a much easier time reading this book than reading the game, which for me is a detriment, but for others in that situation, it might be even better for you. Overall though, I'm happy that these books are going to continue. I feel that the overall art and aesthetic are excellent and accurately captures the game. However, there are so many parts of the storytelling that I would heavily critique. Would I recommend this? The answer is yes and no. If you have already played the game, are familiar with the story, and are just hungry to get back into that atmosphere, I absolutely do recommend the Bloodborne comic book. I think it's an excellent way to jump right back into that atmosphere that we love so much. And the art, again, is exquisite. It's really well done on every single page. However, if you're new to Bloodborne, or either don't want to or can't for one reason or another play the game, and you want something to tell you about the story of it, I don't recommend it because it's not going to give you that that powerful sense of narrative that the game has. What I would recommend instead is going on YouTube and finding some of the best Bloodborne channels and lore and watching those instead. I think that they give you an accurate representation as well as some beautiful visuals. Some channels that I personally recommend are, of course, Vaatividya. He has an amazing 30-minute synopsis of the entire game, which I think would be helpful to anybody, both new and old, to understand. I also recommend Richard Pilbeam, aka Jerk Son's Frontiers. He has a great channel full of insights and cultural references that explain a lot of the things that happen in the game. I also recommend Sinclair Lore. Sinclair and Richard often work together. They create a podcast that isn't just informative, it's also genuinely funny and entertaining. I often find myself marathoning it while doing crafts and other things, and I find new insights from them all the time. I also recommend Aegon of Astora. He has an entire series that explains pretty much all of the important aspects of Bloodborne, from the characters to the areas to the narrative itself. So definitely watch. Shameless plug, I have a couple of videos as well. So that's it for today. If you've read the comic book and feel a certain way about it, definitely let me know. I'd be interested in knowing how you felt about it. Feel free to shoot me a comment down below and thumbs up this video if you enjoyed it. So I hope you guys have a wonderful night or day, wherever you are. Be good to each other, and I'll see you on the next one. And yeah, I have hair on my face. I'd be intrigued to know how you felt. How you felt. I'd be super. Yosefka, I remember the smell of your skin. Soft, subtle markings, then overwhelm. Honey and bitter medicines. Oh, you horror. Oh no. Yosefka, I